friends, welcome back to Light About Loss, the podcast where grief doesn't get swept under the rug. It gets dragged out into the daylight, given a microphone and maybe a sarcastic side eye. Today, I want to talk about something I've been thinking a lot about. How trauma content tends to go viral, but grief, the real, raw, messy, ongoing part of it, people scroll right past it. Unless you package it in a trending audio and pretty lighting, then maybe it gets a second glance. So I'm calling this one Grief Isn't a Trend, but if it was, I'd be an influencer. Because let's be real, if grief was a trend, I'd have the aesthetic. The origin story, the merch, the advocacy, the journal prompts, the podcast. I mean, come on, give me the influencer deal already. But instead, people still act like grief is contagious, or worse, a buzzkill. Let's talk about what people do pay attention to. You can post about a tragedy, something shocking, dramatic, catastrophic, and it might blow up. Car crashes, natural disasters, true crime. Even your initial loss story might go viral if it's packaged with the right music, right? But when you talk about the after, the slow, painful Tuesdays where you're crying into a bag of popcorn while watching Bluey because a cartoon dog reminds you of your dead child. Crickets. People love a before and after, but they hate the during. Because the during is uncomfortable. It's not tied up in a neat bow. It doesn't make them feel inspired. It makes them feel helpless. Or worse, accountable. Okay, but let's have some fun for a second, okay? If grief was an influencer niche, here's what I'd imagine. My Grief Girls starter pack would include waterproof mascara, noise-canceling headphones, a stuffed animal that smells like your child, and a folder of screenshots labeled people who don't text anymore. Or sponsored post for tissues, mental health apps, and companies that ship sympathy cookies. Live Q&As where people ask, so, how are you still grieving? Hashtags like hashtag still sad, hashtag dead kid energy, hashtag cried in Target again. See, I'd be thriving, right? Except not really, because none of this is cute. And none of it is content I wanted to create or ever will. Now let's talk about the difference between sharing your story and being expected to perform it. There's a fine line between advocacy and exploitation. And as a bereaved parent, that line gets blurry real quick. I want to honor my daughter. I want to raise awareness. I want to help people feel less alone. But I also don't want to become someone's tragic inspiration fix. There's this thing I call grief porn, in quotations, where people consume your pain in bite-sized emotional hits, but have no interest in walking with you through it. They want the headline, not the healing. It's exhausting because I didn't sign up to be a content creator for grief. I signed up to be a mom. And now I have to turn my story into something palatable just so people will listen? Here's the thing. Telling the truth about grief comes at a cost. You risk being unfollowed and avoided and told you're too much. You risk people thinking you're stuck or that you haven't moved on. But let me be very clear. Telling the truth is how we heal. It's how I've done some healing. Grief doesn't end. It changes. It evolves. And if I have to show up every week and say that in slightly different ways until people get it, then I will. Because there is power in giving grief a voice. There is power in making space for what's real. Let's talk about the double standard for a second, okay? People will post about their dog dying and get 400 comments, but mention your child who passed and you can feel the tension in the room shift. Someone talks about a breakup and they get flooded with support, but you post about how it feels to live without your baby, and people suddenly forget how to use the comment section. Let's call that what it is: discomfort. And maybe even a little grief illiteracy. Illiteracy. Okay, I'm not saying we should all wallow in sadness. I'm saying we should get better at sitting with people in their pain instead of trying to scroll past it. So, why do I keep posting? Why do I keep podcasting, sharing, storytelling, even when it's hard and awkward and sometimes gets fewer likes than a salad recipe? Because someone out there needs it. Because there's a mom who just lost their baby and thinks she's the only one crying in the Target parking lot. Because someone just got told to move on and they need to hear that grief doesn't have a deadline. Because our stories deserve to be heard, even if they make people uncomfortable. If grief was a trend, I'd be an influencer. But since it's not, I'll just keep being loud about it instead. So here's my call to action. If this episode made you laugh or cry or nod or feel less alone, share it. Leave a review, follow the show, leave a comment, tag me out loud about loss on Instagram. And most importantly, don't stop talking about your people. Don't shrink your story to make others comfortable. Grief may not be trending, but we're not going quiet. And if you are interested in hearing more episodes of this podcast, just search for Loud About Loss wherever you stream. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time on Loud About Loss.